Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining and welcome to Groundbreak. My name's Tim Johnson. I'm Director of Product Marketing at Egnyte.
And my name is Carol Filio. I am a construction marketing consultant working with Egnyte. And today we're presenting Procore and Egnyte integrations that empower.
All right, so let's go on here to the agenda. And today we're going to talk a little bit, as Carol said, first to give you an understanding of a day in the life, kind of what the construction workflow is. We're going to give you an example of what a customer that's using both Procore and Egnyte, what they're doing, as well as go into more details about that integration, and then talk about the advantage that Egnyte brings to using it with Procore.
So before we get started, what I'd like to do is ask a few questions of the audience. For example, I want you to give some thought to how your own data flows today. Specifically, what's missing? Are there silos and/or content sprawl? Do you have the proper security in place? And how many software tools are you using per project or throughout your organization? And how many of these tools actually hold documents or copies of documents? This goes back to the content sprawl question. How easy is it for everyone involved in the field or at the office to have access to these documents or the documents that they need? And how do you make sure that the people who need access and only they have access? And at the end of a project, how long does it take to gather documents for that all-important closeout? So we'd love to hear about what's working for you and what isn't. As you think of it, pop it in the chat box along with any other questions that you might have. So without further ado, let's kick things off. There's an author by the name of Simon Sinek that wrote a book called Start With Why. And in it, he describes that if you as an individual or an organization can understand and be able to articulate why you do whatever it is that you do, then everything just flows from there. At the end of the day, people don't invest in what you do, they invest in why you're doing it. So that brings us to Egnyte's core beliefs. Egnyte's focus has always been and will always be making sure that you have the right content in your hands so that you can grow your business and by extension, improve the world around you. Now let's pause for a moment and consider that since every action has an equal and opposite reaction, then the inverse is true, that content in the wrong hands can have an immensely negative impact. Egnyte is on a mission to provide tight security in the cloud while providing an accessible and flexible collaboration platform designed to empower you and your team.
All right, so we're going to give now an example of a workflow throughout a project. So in each phase of construction, obviously there are different apps that are needed. So from design through the bidding process, construction, and closeout, there are numerous apps that are needed to advance that project. So some of them are industry specific, while others just support the day-to-day operations. And supporting all of them is Egnyte. And we have dozens of integrations with construction applications, plus integrations with all of the popular productivity applications that people are using every day. Now, as most of you know, Procore plays a huge role throughout the better part of these phases. And now with its integration with Egnyte, end users get the benefit of data governance, added security, and plus all of the unique features that have made Egnyte a fan favorite with Procore users for years. Now we're going to show you an example of how Tutor Purini is using Procore and Egnyte to advance their program.
So we sat down to speak with Albert Lee, who's a senior business systems analyst for Tutor Purini, and he shared some insights on how they're using Procore. Tutor Purini is a longtime Egnyte customer, so the fact that Procore synced back to Egnyte was a huge draw for them. First off, Albert was clear in letting us know that the only way to make this thing work is having a centralized repository. And feedback from the field has been great so far, and a big part of that was the Procore and Egnyte integration. The ability to drop a drawing in Egnyte and be able to share it with subs, owners, architects via Procore was also a huge benefit to them. They also love the ability to tack a punch list right on the model and have that information synced back to the cloud and visible to all stakeholders. He also shared that security is a big part of it. They're a publicly traded company and they must comply with some stringent rules, SOX, for example. Legal hold and data lifecycle, also a huge part of what they needed. And we'll speak to that a little later in this presentation. Now, before the Procore and Egnyte integration, well, redundancy and duplication caused some reconciliation. That meant that they were spending man hours and resources to reconcile different platforms, and manual process really that had a big potential for errors and or omissions. They were also dealing with some fragmented silos. Now with the data bridge or the sync, the Procore sync, this is no longer necessary. Everything syncs back to Egnyte automatically. One of the biggest pieces was just the overall improved workflow for Tutor Purini. So in the pre-con stage, for example, selecting bidders, it was a great way to disseminate, making sure bidders were notified, they were able to communicate the scope of the project clearly. In selecting bidders, all the drawings were uploaded within Egnyte, then pushed out to all the subs and trades from there. In the construction phase, drawings, they were able to leverage on an iPad, actually. They use Bluebeam as a redline tool, so everyone gets the most current set of drawings, and it's updated in real time. And post-construction, closeout, ownership, commissioning, punch list, everything loaded into Egnyte. They were able to share models as well for clash detection. They use Navisworks for their field guys. So knowing exactly if ductwork is impeding a change order was key to capturing before you put it in. So overall, the biggest improvement was in collaboration, having the most current, and experiencing less rework. So buy-in is not only important from above, but it's also important in the field. So the people that are actually using the technology, that's critical to the success of any implementation. And that's exactly what Albert got. So let's have a look at the two integrations that currently exist between Procore and Egnyte. The first one is Procore Sync. And what that is that Egnyte and Procore connect through an automated two-way sync so that all the files in your Procore documents folder can easily be synced with your Egnyte folders. You're going to save time, minimize human error, and that's associated with file storage. So what you see on the screen here is the Egnyte web UI. Super intuitive, super easy, really just the click of a button where you see here the Procore project sync to get it going. The other is the embedded UI. So essentially, everything that you would see or be able to do in the Egnyte UI, you can now do within Procore. It's embedded directly into Procore's interface. So access to the files in Egnyte, you can have that access without having to switch contexts. So basically anything that you can do in the Egnyte web UI, you can do now within Procore. You can access, share, and collaborate on the files from the Procore project page. And also included are, the access to e-signature integrations, Bluebeam, all of the other integrations as well.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the advantages of Egnyte. We've broken it down into 5 areas, and the first one is a seamless desktop experience. So if you're using apps from a desktop, you have a workflow that you're used to, you're comfortable with, and it works for you. And we replicate that. And plus, we go a step further in giving you access to that from anywhere, plus with no VPN required. Essentially, it's just another drive letter, but you can access it from anywhere. The next one is all about fast access from the job site. Now, we all know that job site internet connectivity is spotty at best in most cases, and it can really have a negative impact on how getting access and working on the content that you need. With our applications and our backend support, our synchronization and our hybrid approach, caching that content at the job site means that slow job site internet isn't going to slow you down because you have real-time access as if you were in the office. The next is all about collaboration. And as the project's getting more and more complicated, the need to collaborate both internally and externally only continues to grow. So we provide an easy way to do that that's secure and still gives all of the visibility that you need so you know who's accessing what and when. The next is about governance. And this means ensuring only the right people have access to the right content at the right time. That means restricting access when they don't need it and easily being able to grant access for a period of time when they do. So that gives you the ability to make sure that you really restrict that, keep your content secure, and also goes along in the compliance area as well, which I'll talk about next. And in the end-to-end lifecycle management, as we continue to embrace more and more digital content, the amount and number of files continues to grow exponentially. And that means we really have to figure out what to do with it. So there needs to be a way to intelligently retain, archive, and delete it. Gone are the days where you can go in and just use a spreadsheet and figure out when you have to delete stuff, go back in, set yourself a reminder every so often and do it. You need something to go in and actually search for where that content is, align it with a project, and then know at some point you have to keep that for a certain period of a number of years. And also after the project is over, you want to be able to move that over to an archive because it's cheaper and it's more secure and it keeps your prime working area tidy. And then finally, at the end of the retention period, you want to delete that as quickly as possible to minimize your exposure to risk. So having that done all intelligently makes it significantly easier for you, but it also helps you to comply better. And knowing where everything is means you can also apply with regulatory compliance as well, such as GDPR, CCPA, and a host of other privacy regulations that continue to come up.
That's great. Thanks, Tim. So before we sign off, let's have a quick look at some Egnyte customer success stories. We'll start with Balfour Beatty. They saved $5 million on the $800 million terminal renovation project at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. Now, this particular pilot project helped to make Egnyte the de facto standard throughout Balfour Beatty's US operations. Next is H2I Group. This is a specialty contractor out of Minnesota with operations in all 50 states. They found themselves able to pivot quite literally overnight at the outbreak of the pandemic because they already had entrusted Egnyte with the day-to-day management of their data. So as you can see here, this has had a significant impact on their business continuity. And overall, H2I is actually tracking to gain a return on investment of 1.9 million over 3 years. Last but certainly not least is Alberici, which is a diversified construction company that operates in North America with offices in US, Canada, and Mexico. They have annual revenues exceeding $2 billion today. They came to us to solve slow sync times with Nasuni. They were dealing with 17 regional offices working on an average of 100 projects at any given time. So Egnyte not only solved their sync issues, they also met Alberici's requirements of granular security permissions, the ability to sync content locally for offline access, smart caching, and of course, the Procore integration where they're now accessing project files through a single system. So that's it for us. Thanks for joining us today. If you have any questions, please visit our virtual booth. We have people standing by to answer and demo Egnyte for you.